right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. That conversation begins right now. And my guest in studio one more time, Muthiora Karriara, party leader, TGN, is with us here. Is a former deputy presidential candidate. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you, Trevor.
Also, Anthony Buluma, CEO, Kenya Young Parliamentarians Association, KYPA, is here with us. Asante sana for making time.
Asante.
And Nerima Wako, Executive Director, Siasa Place, will join us in just a bit. As soon as she comes in, we'll rope her into the conversation. But we'd like to hear from you mostly. What does the country need at this moment? Trevor Mbidi at Citizen TV Kenya, use the hashtag Daybreak. And Muthiora, that's where we start.
Yeah.
What does Kenya need at this moment?
Of course, not rhetoric. We need reconciliation. Kenya is at a point we've never been before. Our economy is in turmoil. Our leaders or leadership clueless, and citizens are more gullible than they have ever been. We are creating the least number of jobs given the tough and unconducive business environment that we have. So to not add to the bag of already very harsh conditions, we need to sit down, talk to each other, and find a way forward.
Okay.
Talk will not help. It's time to act.
Okay. Buluma, what does the country need right now?
Thank you, Trevor. I think, first of all, what is clear is that we are just almost a year away from the last election. What the country needs is what Mwananchi needs. Mwananchi needs to put food on the table. Mwananchi needs good shelter. Mwananchi needs to access the very basics in terms of basic needs. And for that to really be achieved, the country needs to start refocusing our conversations from the political class to the people, so that we begin to empower them in a way that, we will be responding to why they went to the ballot to vote. Because every other time, before election, after election, the country is just focused on the political actors. We forget the important people in this conversation, who are the people. And for true reconciliation to happen, Trevor, there are certain things that must be met. One, you must be able to empower the people to a point where they will see the essence of reconciliation. Because what we have is that the political actors are the ones always conversing around their own reconciliation. But we leave out the important and the fundamental component in all reconciliatory discussion. Trevor, you might want to also observe that part of what this country needs is an entire healing in the political culture that we have. Because it is what takes away the whole notion of reconciliation. Because we have inculcated a political culture that never ends, from one cycle to the next one. And that is manifested even in terms of our conversation on important things, like what we are discussing, the finance bill, People are leaving out the important conversation. I was in another show and I pointed out that I would desire to see, the same level of energy that was being used when campaigning. We had the president going around the country engaging in economic forums and directly getting feedback from Mwananchi, as opposed to just the top echelons of our society. If we can be able to achieve that, you can imagine, even on this finance bill, the intensity that has been given, and big up to Citizen TV for the big conversation that we hosted the other day. It at least brought Mwananchi closer to understanding what exactly is going on. So true reconciliation will first be born out of the knowledge we were able to impart on the Wananchi. Number two, the honest conversation that are not necessarily on the political actors, but on what is in it for that mama mboga that we used their tag to campaign. Yeah. I think that should be where we should be heading. All right.
Nerima, before you walked in, and Nerima Wako is now with us, Executive Director, Siasa Place. Our question was, what does the country need right now?
Thanks, Trevor, and good morning, everyone. I agree with what Buluma has mentioned. I agree with his sentiments. I believe that what the Constitution envisions is what Kenyans want. We do want a right to education, to healthcare, and also housing, and also sanitation. However, what we see is completely different. We are not seeing transparency. We have seen countless numbers of scandals. We have seen cases being dropped. We have seen people not being held accountable. So it's not just about getting the resources to be able to achieve the lived dream of the Constitution. It's being able to show the Kenyan public that with your resources entrusted in our leadership, we're going to provide those services for you. So right now, Kenyans have a lot of doubt. We're seeing the front page of the Standard. Education also has a lot of losses. And for many Kenyans right now, education is a priority. Getting children to school. Number 2 is health. So when you start talking about housing, we still feel like housing is a little bit of a distance. So they are issues that are pitching the Kenyan person right now. However, we feel that they are not responding to the issues that we are seeing in our very faces. So for me, I would say accountability, transparency, and also utilization of resources. We need to have a government that works with frugality, not necessarily spending too much in the large motorcades or the large gatherings in meetings constantly, the expenditure of meeting. We have an administration that pushes for digitization, but they won't have virtual meetings. Practice what you preach. Have these meetings virtually. We don't always have to meet physically, and we're still able to meet the goals of the country that you're pushing for.
Okay. Mudira, when you started your opening remarks, you said that the leaders are clueless. What did you mean by that, and why?
You look at the promises that were made during the campaign period, and then you look at where we are currently. They've walked back on some of the promises that were made then. Obviously, when they were making those promises, we believed that they had information about the state of our economy. So given an opportunity to govern, they would deliver on those promises. So when you see them walking back on the promises they had made, for instance, the president promising that in a very short time after the measures they took with regard to the sort of state corporation to state corporation sale of oil from Saudi, Oman, and UAE, that we would see the dollar versus the Kenya exchange rate come down, and he even gave a period of time, and then that not happening. When you look at the cost of gas, he said that would come down in 6 months significantly, and then him coming back to tell us that what he meant was the cylinder and not the gas. Clearly, that's someone that's not in charge either of their faculties or of the information that he's using to make decisions. So when I say clueless, I'm basically referring to some of these things that have been exhibited out there. You remember, they gave us a promise, a guarantee actually, that the chaos in the North Rift would cease. But to date, we don't know what's happening there. We just know that the problem has persisted further. It's just that the media has been kept out of that space. That's what I mean, Trevor.
But you also said that the citizens are gullible.
Yes, we are. And that's because actually just looking at how peaceful they are currently with the imminent passing of the Finance Bill 2023, we know that this bill will have serious ramifications to our economy. Yet Kenyans are quiet. People have petitioned Parliament. You remember the civil servants coming to the streets the other day. And then this week, my friends came together and we were taking our petition to Parliament, so they know that it's not a political gimmick. It's not politicians asking that this bill be stopped. It's Kenyans who currently are facing these hard economic times. And Kenyans did not show up. We just had a couple. There was just about 300 of us. So there is a danger, there is fire, it's burning right below where we are seated, and yet we are not acting. So, we have seen the president come forth and sort of intimidate Parliament. He said they are watching those who will stop this bill, and yet Kenyans are just silent. They think that whatever he's doing is for their good, when we all know that it's not.
Okay. The finance bill will be tabled for the second reading probably next week around Tuesday or Thursday, because the committee is right now meeting in Naivasha, so it hasn't passed yet. But is it fair to blame Kenyans that they are gullible, Buluma, when their voices have been heard in different forums, including right here when you're talking about the issues that you're facing? Is this a Kenyan issue or is it an administration problem?
I don't think it's, I would not apportion blame on the Kenyan populace because I think Kenyans already pronounced themselves through the election process, and their voices must be manifested through the elected leaders. And hence the reason why the current constitution has a very prominent position on the aspect of public participation, so that the issues, the views of Wananchi are accommodated in all matters or procedures, especially undertaken within the precincts of parliament. And therefore, what is expected is that even as we dispense with the finance bill, we want to see a lot of these views that Wananchi have been pushing accommodated in the conversation, in the bill. I know for a fact during the big conversation, there was an undertaking from the chair himself that from their thinking, the public participation process is ongoing. You know, even just participating in that plenary, that interview, he acknowledged that some of the valid conversations that are being pushed across would inform the ultimate document. And I think there's still a window for us to improve on the finance bill. From a personal point of view, I think, save for just a few sections, I quite associate with the propositions. I know, for example, everyone is anti the housing component. Yeah. But, you know, there are those of us, Trevor, who are not as privileged to have grown, you know, in where we live right now. I know for a fact why housing for me would be a priority, because I know I've lived in disadvantage. You know, I have lived in shanties. I know what it means to share toilets, to live a very indignified kind of life. So when I'm told that they are my brothers and sisters who probably are living on the same situation today will be able to access, you know, better housing conditions, I mean, I would shy off from, you know, endorsing such a move. And I think that's the genuine conversation that we need, because we need to actually say, those of us who are privileged, are we giving chance to the ones who are not as exposed, who are not as privileged as we are, to also voice what they really want? And that's why I'm saying, Trevor, in all this conversation, the clear disconnect that is coming out is that the public are being left out, you know? Okay. You could see from the big conversation how Kenyans are busy trying to just bargain for a space, bargain for their voice to be heard. And the only way their voice can be heard is if they are as informed as those pushing this conversation in so far as the bills are concerned. But
aren't you concerned that the regulations around the housing is not clear yet? I mean, even you're saying that you would want to have a house, and you know what it is not to have a decent house. Yeah. But even with it right now, you're probably not even qualified to have that house. Yeah, that is clear, and that's why I said save for the few challenges. But the bigger picture is that housing is indeed an important priority that should actually be incorporated in the finance bill. But having said that, why is it that we don't have the regulations ready? Okay, the PS for housing cited issues of legality and the gaps that are there. But I think, again, like I said, for ownership of this conversation, the public needs to feel like they're walking the talk with the president and the government of the day. Yeah. But you see, when they feel left out, that's when you get all this rebellion against this. Because, like you said, none of us even knows how they intend to implement. Like I had in one of the submissions, there's the whole concept of the National Housing Corporation. Why are we not exploiting that, you know? Because it's an existing platform that can actually provide a clear guideline in terms of the regulation. So why are we not exploiting those guidelines? These kind of suspicions are what is diluting a very good intention. Okay. And therefore, that's why as a country, we must really move beyond just having a few individuals talk through the entire process and accommodate the views of many and sundry, so that all Kenyans feel part and parcel of this conversation. One thing that was also coming out, and I would really want to appeal out there, that we actually need a study around that. I don't know why the impression that Kenyans don't trust their government keeps popping up. In the conversation, when we were doing the big conversation, it kept coming up. How do I trust you with my money? Yeah. You know? So also government on their part, there are things they need to get right. Like, for example, how are you handling the issue of corruption? You know? You talked about reconciliation when we were starting. What is reconciliation? It's about
having honest conversation, you know, that is built from the bottom. You know, we've been talking about bottom up. So now is the right time to actually discuss bottom up practically, because you're not on the rhetoric bit. The rhetoric bit, we finished with it during the August election. Now we are on the practical.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Nerima, the issue with you now is not the what, it's the how, really, because you also mentioned housing as one of the priorities. There, Buluma is saying for him it is one of the biggest priority because it's lived in a slum setup before. So what is the concern here? Is it the timing, or is it the how? Is it the lack of trust in the government? Because if we agree that that is a concern, it has been tabled in the finance bill, why all the quagmire then?
The how processes are extremely important, because it's due to process we can see whether we're in the right direction or not. You can have a very beautiful plan to achieve something, but if you fail in the process, you're not going to make it to your goal. The beautiful thing about Kenya is that we have brilliant minds on our soil and even abroad, overpowering in many industries. We have experts. So for me, it's to have experts and a diversity of views on the table to be able to come up with a proper plan with specific timelines so that we can answer the how. Because when Kenyans are asking many questions that, oh, I'm 55, how long am I going to work? Will that money come to me? Oh, what if I don't have There are too many unanswered questions. So before you even process and have a particular plan to be executed, answer those particular questions. So I've been fortunate to live in the US for several years. We need to study countries that do have social welfare. Which ones are we planning to try and emulate and create our own form of social welfare? There are all their pros and cons of them. If you live in a country like Denmark, where you have education is free, health is free, and tax is high. However, you have a country that is extremely accountable, and they use their taxes to be able to achieve those services. But Kenya, it's a different story. We work in the counties, in rural areas. There's absolutely no drugs in some of these health facilities. So for sure, there will be counties without houses. But we have seen in paper, in reports, houses exist. So this is the Kenyan issue. That means it needs a Kenyan solution. So for me, my main concern is living and working in the US. We have seen how social welfare, there are people who have taken advantage of it. We have seen the Democratic Party push for people to be able to be taken care of through that welfare. But the Republicans can't stand it because they feel it creates a population that is lazy, one that is entitled, one that feels that because the Constitution says I have access to this, it should be provided to me. So I believe the way that the Constitution was formulated and drafted is idealistic. However, there is a context that is of the Kenya now. Majority population is young. Okay? The average age is 19, okay? And they are idle. This should be the concern of our government today. How do we create opportunities for them? Not short-term opportunities. How will this create long-term impact so that we don't have an idle generation, which will be a ticking time bomb? So for me, I'm not saying that housing is not important. I'm just saying that there are several issues that are very dangerous. My background is in emergency management. Yeah. Right now we are dealing with fires. However, there is a huge disaster that is about to occur and we're not prepared for it. So that's what I am saying. Yeah. Process is key, but also who do we have on the table? We need to have a clear plan before it's executed.
But this is what the government is saying. You mentioned that the average age is 19, and they are saying that if they pull off this housing levy in building houses more than 200,000, they'll employ about 1 million of them. And there's always been the counter-argument that not everybody's a mason, not everybody's a plumber. True, but it doesn't mean that if that mason or that plumber gets a job, then theirs is less valuable than the people who are graduates. So what is the problem with that? This is an attempt by the government to have people employed.
Kwame Owuno was on your show, right, a few days ago, and he answered this question brilliantly, and I cannot even mimic. He said, if we have housing that is for 14 million, and what kind of job creation did it create? Why do we think that in a short term, 250,000 will create more jobs than that? Simple math, it does not equate. However, even in his argument, if we look at something like the SGR, it created jobs. It did. How many jobs are there now after the SGR? Simple statistics and studies is all I'm asking for. So that's why I said we have enough experts to show us that, yes, when it comes to construction, jobs are there. But those jobs are short-term. After the houses are constructed, what happens? And that is the question I want answered by our government. After the houses are put up, what do we do with all these people? And we've also seen the issue of investment. We have seen what China has done. When they come and invest and build roads and build buildings, we are seeing all the engineers are Chinese. So is the government telling me they're going to have Kenyan engineers? All the equipment is going to be Kenyan. The material must be bought and produced in Kenya. I'm not hearing that side. I'm just hearing, yes, investors, foreigners there. But then we know what they do. When they come, the people who are doing the work, the Kenyans are the ones putting potholes or digging holes. Those are the ones that are doing their sweeping. That is the work. Okay. So I'm talking about decent work that people are able to raise families with, because these are young people who have families. Then, once you can answer that question for me, I will feel satisfied.
All right. I'll take a quick break, but Mudiora, I want to hear your views on this. You've been representing the people who live in slums, by the way, most of them. Yeah. That is what the government is targeting, to upgrade their living standards. Why are you objecting this?
Well, I just say that we are gullible because when it was explained to the people that what we are seeking is to create jobs for you who are currently not salaried, people sort of started to join the bandwagon, when actually what this housing levy thing is doing, it's attached to other very punitive measures in the Finance Bill 2023 that will go to destroy high-quality jobs in an attempt to create low-quality jobs. The jobs that these people will take are not the kind of jobs that will generate the taxes that this government needs to deliver on its promises to the people. Yet, they are making Kenyans believe that if we implement the Finance Bill 2023, we'll be able to raise the revenues we need and do that which we promised we will do for you. So, the timing, for once, is wrong. The process has been hurried. I was reading some of the proposals, and I saw that amongst the measures that will be undertaken to ensure that the fund is not pilfered, that those who go against the procurement processes and misappropriate the funds, there is a maximum penalty of 10,000. Imagine a fund that in a year draws about 108 billion or more, has a penalty of just 10,000. This is the kind of conversation that we all need to be having. Are we being honest? Or is it, as I had said right here on Citizen TV 3 years ago when the previous regime tried to introduce this housing levy fund, that all they will do is they will take your money and run, because in 15 years they'll not be here to answer for whatever actions they'll have taken with the money that people will have given them.
All right. Let's take a quick break on Daybreak. When we come back, we're still talking about the priorities of the nation and what the young people think and their views on this. We'd like to hear your views as well. At Trevor Mbidi at Citizen TV Kenya, use the hashtag Daybreak. What does the country need right now? That's the conversation we're having. All right, see you in just a bit.